Hi everyone. Thanks for joining us. Um, I wanted to do a live with Alex to talk about. He made a video which I haven't been able to watch. Full disclosure, I was getting my nails done, and I didn't have my AirPods. So anyway, let's just go into this blind. If you really want probably a very wonky take, you can watch his video that he made. Alex, why are you making that face?
I'm trying to. It says you have a bad internet connection. So,
No, I
and
think
I'm.
it's
Huh?
yeah. I think it's I have a bad internet connection. Do you also? Well, we're in the
Uh,
same house. But
I think mine is good. I don't know about what the problem is with your internet connection, but mine's totally fine.
work on it.
You need to
So
you need to fix your internet connection.
so anyway, let's jump into this. I um I'm sorry, what do we want Ukraine to do? We're gonna make them sign something, a deal before Thanksgiving, which is like kind of a weird deadline because like we're the only country that celebrates Thanksgiving. So anyway, and Steve Witkoff, which I know you're a huge fan of Steve Witkoff and you think he's just genius.
He's peachy. Okay, so first of all, as usual, pleasure to do these things with you. I mean, I wish you could find the time to do these with me more often. And this is a little bit lighter than, of course, the video I just did. And Justin's on here, my assistant. He'll help feed some questions through that we've got coming from our viewers and listeners. My goal is to start a drumbeat of activities. I posted something on video on the socials. It's really a hard push. The reason that there's an urgency around this, um, over the course of the past couple of days, really over the course of about a week or so in Ukrainian channels, they've been getting um, pressure to make a decision about this 28-point plan that Stephen Witkoff received from Kirill Dmitriev, his Russian counterpart. I kind of put it that way because it's, maybe that's a little bit of an extreme. Supposedly this is a negotiation, but a lot of the points are a follow through from Alaska.
Involved?
Huh?
Were the Ukrainians involved in these negotiations? And
No, they were basically given this 28-point plan, very similar to what was offered in Alaska. It amounts to a capitulation. It hits a lot of the notes that the Russians want. They want the Ukrainians to give up territory that the Russians currently don't control. Significant portions of this region of Donetsk that are outside of Russian control, including, frankly, significant cities. Some of the most significant cities that Russia, outside of Mariupol, which was a pretty significant city, of about 500,000, that the Russians have seized. These Slovyansk and Kramatorsk in Donetsk. These are uh, significant swaps. The in the Alaska format, there was a offer of a swap, if you remember. Like supposedly the Ukrainians were going to get something in return. Doesn't even have that. It'd be the Ukrainians giving up territory, nothing, no territory in return. The Russians would freeze the lines. The Ukrainians would write into their constitution no joining NATO. Um, the Europeans would basically sign on after the fact to Ukraine not joining NATO. So it would be a kind of an amendment to the NATO charter. Um, no clear security guarantees. It doesn't say anything about the U.S. surging enormous amounts of military material to Ukraine to warn off further aggression. Really, it amounts to a capitulation, and I think what we refer to as a poison pill. Things that Ukrainians can't accept. There's no security guarantees. There's nothing that really is in it for Ukraine except for stopping the war when Ukraine is effectively defending. Effectively defending meaning that they're grinding the Russians down. The Russians might be taking to small tracts of territory, but at an extremely high cost. So this doesn't really have much merit. What I think the play here is And we need to get into a couple of other aspects about like the corruption part. We haven't even touched that. What I think the play is forcing this down the throat of the Ukrainians saying no, and then Trump having the pretext to abandon Ukraine and abandon Europe, which is a really, kind of a particularly dangerous situation, siding with our adversaries against our allies, encouraging Russia to be in its aggression, encouraging other adversaries like China to be aggressive in exchange for what looks like this is the corrupt portion of it, an enrichment scheme. Some of the points of this, there are multiple $100 billion tranches that are discussed in the peace plan that's floating around. One is that the Russians invest in Ukraine in reconstruction. Another one is that the Europeans invest in Ukraine in reconstruction. Another one is, the balance, which is the U.S. and Russia collaborating on investments that are not necessarily Ukraine, but in Russia and so forth. So if this is a potential grab at like billions of dollars for Trump and his cronies and Witkoff, who's a developer also, in the format of Qatar giving a $400 million 747 over to Trump for his personal use, and the U.S. Taxpayer paying for the refurbishment of this thing in the format of Saudi Arabia offering all these sweetheart deals and crypto deals and so forth to Trump for his personal benefit. And there are numerous factors there. It is if we had a co-equal branch of uh, government, the Congress, this would be impeachable offenses. Um, so it's all in all a very, very dangerous situation. And I think in this chaos of so many different crises going on, this one can't be missed because it could have longstanding impacts on what we do. I saw you. Did you disappear? Are you still there? Mm, okay. Well, let's see. You joined. Great. Um, there are some questions coming in. Are the Ukrainians turning on Zelensky? From is one of the questions. I don't think that. Oh, okay. Thanks for the heads up. She's having mic issues. Um, I don't think they're turning on Zelensky. There have been some developments on the domestic front. There's a scandal around a couple of folks that are closely associated with Zelensky, whether it's in his former life as a media mogul, um, or his appointed individuals, the deputy minister um, of Energo Atom, which is a state-owned enterprise responsible for atomic energy. Um, those scandals are indicating, some 100 million stolen for a country that's now undergoing enormous pressure with regards to its energy sector, rolling blackouts for large portions of the day. We're talking about 12 to 18 hours. Um, and the population expects this issue to be addressed, not for Zelensky to subordinate these independent anti-corruption agencies like he tried to do before. Um, there is pressure on the battlefield. The Russians are somewhat accelerating their gains. They still haven't had much to show for this war, this year of war, meaning that
Sorry, it just was not working.
okay, do you want to pull up a chair?
I'll just
Yeah. Okay. So you could pull up a chair.
It's okay.
Okay. So you're going to be distractions then right there.
Okay.
It's fine.
Well,
Okay, but the point,
I have some questions.
yeah, the point is that I think there is pressure, but I wouldn't say it amounts to the population turning on Zelensky or enormous vulnerabilities. I think the expectation is that Zelensky addresses these issues and comes up with solutions. And part of these, are things that I've been talking about for almost 4 years that the state still hasn't pivoted to mass mobilization. And that's a part of the solution set. Lowering the draft age, making sure that the society is pivoted to sustaining another year of war or more.
Okay. So before we have another audience question, but I have a question for you. So you alluded to that the motivation is that we say, do this or we leave. We're not going to help you at all. Really stark terms. I don't know why we're giving them such harsh and unreasonable terms for this. I mean, it's a peace plan. I did ask Alex, what's the difference between a ceasefire and a peace plan? Because, maybe you all know, but I didn't. And it's basically like a treaty to end the war or a ceasefire, which just temporarily ends it. So
Or a ceasefire would pause the war
right, pause it.
to negotiations.
Right. So it is one or the other. And that's kind of where the red line or whatever that we are giving. What I find sort of most objectionable about this is, aside from the terms, which I do find harsh, is that the Ukrainians aren't involved in what the terms would be. So that's kind of weird, don't you think? Is that normal?
It is not normal, and we've tried this pattern before, and it's failed miserably. Fundamentally, we have a situation in which the two great powers, I don't think Russia meets the billing there, are negotiating on behalf of small and medium states and dictating terms. It is pretty absurd. This hasn't played out really well. We tried to do this in the beginning of our relationship post the collapse of the Soviet Union when Ukraine was first independent. We tried to Russia tried to enforce terms on Ukraine, and it wasn't until the Clinton administration kind of took another look and said, "Well, it can't be just pressure. We need to entice." That we had a much more reasonable approach, and the Ukrainians ended up giving up I'm sorry, hundreds, thousands of nuclear weapons. They had the third largest nuclear arsenal in the world. And we've tried to impose our will before, and it doesn't work. I mean, the Ukrainians will not uh, just abdicate their sovereignty and independence just because we say we want them to. And the Trump administration really has a fundamental misunderstanding of the limits of U.S. power, the bounds of U.S. greatness. Frankly, I think they are the ones that doubt what the U.S. could accomplish, but in concert with our allies. But the limits of U.S. power, that we can impose our will on small states. We can't do that to Canada. We can't do that to Colombia. We can't do that to Ukraine. And we've completely folded with regards to China. So it's pretty absurd. I think a lot of this is just a bluff that this administration is pushing.
All right. What happens if Ukraine says no?
I think that the administration may try this line of suspending all cooperation.
Okay.
I think that could be costly because that cooperation includes intelligence sharing that's still robust. It includes the ability of the Ukrainians to employ long range munitions that the U.S. has provided because it requires a kind of software and data to be pushed. Um, so if it actually takes hold, it could be impactful. It could accelerate the Russians' march. I think that there's a good chance that there's pushback actually on this approach. I think the fact is that this occurs weeks after an election in which the United States, I think as a whole, even though it's New Jersey and Virginia that voted, that is a huge sample set of the rest of the United States that Trump's policies, Trump's chaos, Trump's economic policies and international relations policies are deeply unpopular. So we can actually see some pushback. We could see some reversals on Trump's desire to do that. But right now, I think it's a concerted push. It's a powerful bluff, and with a high risk that the U.S. maybe does drop Ukraine. But I think it's right now. I think it's more of a bluff.
Okay. But if we did, would Europe be able to? Would Europe step up, and would they be able to step up and fill the gaps of what we currently do?
No, I don't think so. I think there would be a mad scramble. I think that there is more that Europe can do potentially. They're a little bit slow rolling with regards to the economic and military support. They would need to scale up additional resources. The intelligence gaps, these systems that Europe also relies on. So it's actually demonstrating that the U.S. is not a reliable actor for Europe too. That they could withdraw the support on the whim. I think that plugging some of these holes would be challenging. I think there are you know some crisis plans that have been started to kind of take shape in terms of support coming from actors other than the U.S. But I don't think anybody could plug the hole anytime soon.
Okay, so this is an audience question. Do we believe that the Russians would keep their word even if they agree to a settlement?
Zero chance. Not a possibility that the Russians would keep their word. In the most extreme lane, which is a hot war, they would probably look to take a pause. They would look to undertake actions that have plausible deniability. They would undertake, what are more hybrid war actions like saboteurs, like infiltrators, like separatists in Ukraine, to continue to advance their cause of destabilizing Ukraine. Um, and then they would continue to undertake hybrid war because they would see it as a cleavage between the U.S. and Europe. They would see this. The Europeans would break with this approach. They would reject it utterly. And in this, they would see a wedge in which to fracture NATO. I think, if anything, we could see a doubling down of Russian aggression. And it would be, that's a facet that I didn't discuss in my video, but we could see this drive a huge wedge and this is what the Russians are hoping for, a huge wedge within NATO for them to exploit. So a much more dangerous situation and something that I need to make sure I don't miss in the way I talk about this over the next however amount of time it does to get the Trump administration to reverse course.
So I am not the expert you are, and I haven't studied as much, but we did live in Moscow for 3 years. And I worked at a Russian kindergarten, a private Russian kindergarten. And I worked with Russians and other people from various satellite countries or parts of the former Soviet Union. I can tell you this mentality, just what I saw, and I wouldn't say anecdotally, my experience is once there's one win, that's it, game over. I mean, I guess that would hard to believe that it's analogous to a national security situation, but it is the mentality of the Russians, especially that how would
To push further.
yeah, the Russian, the Russian
Mindset.
yes, but it's like the hold they have over the former Soviet countries and the way they want to control them is because their superiority is
Chauvinism.
yeah, but they just feel so superior to all other parts, and Putin especially, he's made this known. But I saw it. I saw the way the like, I don't know what you call them, native Russians, or I'm not sure, but like pure Russians, I don't even know. But the way they felt so superior to everyone else all the time. And it was just a constant need to sort of demonstrate their superiority. And when they won, they just wanted to do it again the next day. There was no giving in. If you gave in, then it would just become like just a more thing. So another question is the U.S. providing trustworthy intelligence to Ukraine? Do you believe at this point?
Yes, it's totally trustworthy. Anything that's coming through military channels is going to be trustworthy. In certain regards, there have been some interesting developments. Uh, the European Command, professional military, has taken over much more of the operational support to the war. This was a decision made, a couple months back that the Pentagon itself and the political appointees would be less hands-on. I'm sure there are plenty of decisions that are delegated and require the political leadership, the Department of Defense to weigh in, but other decisions have been pushed down to the European Command for support, and anything that's coming through the military channels is reliable, but it is also subject to the whims of whims. I say that because the Trump administration and the political class is flaky, but subject to what is standard fare civilian control of the military. So the military gets its direction from the civil authorities in the Department of Defense. But I could see this, being. I can't believe that we're back here, 10 months in, where the Trump administration, is almost coming full circle back to the point of breaking all support for Ukraine, which is something that I feared on day one, that we would freeze out Ukraine. But we're back here now, even after the hard lessons learned, all simply because I think Trump sees a ability to steal, to self enrich. I think that's what's driving this. It's overcoming the embarrassment. It's overcoming everything else that he's experienced with Russia. If he could get his big win of these deals and multi-billion-dollar contracts to build Trump towers.
Mm-hmm. No, I mean, it comes down to that for, I think, every single country. Is dealing with every country, with every foreign leader, with whatever. So one thing that I did read in the Wall Street Journal, I mean, to the point where I could, because I don't subscribe, so I can only read what's free. But it said...
I have a subscription, we could share it.
Okay, well, so it did say that one of the things was limiting the size of Ukraine's military to 600,000. Did you read that? Oh. And that was one of the...
I think it was 800,000, but
okay, well, that was one of the stipulations. What is it now? What is it usually? What does that mean? Is that meaningful in any way?
It's actually not necessarily a bad number, depending on how you count military. If you exclude paramilitary, so the Ministry of Interior and the National Guard, if you exclude, what are territorial defense troops and stuff like that, an 800,000 man force, and Justin, double check it for me. I think it's 800. Isn't necessarily awful, because that leaves plenty of room for other troops, and to potentially enough troops to defend. And it's a question of, like, does that mean active duty versus reserve? I think that's all kind of ambiguous and in some space. That is not necessarily the most challenging aspect of it. The most challenging aspects of this are like point 21, which is a de facto recognition of Russia's control over the territories it's currently occupying. Ukraine giving up portions of Donetsk. For those folks that had just joined, it's 600,000. All right, thanks. You got it. You're right, babe. So, yeah, that's probably short, but again, plenty of room for other troops to be able to support defense.
So let's say you are Ukrainian who lives in a part that's now Russia. What happens? Audience question. So what happens to those people?
Yeah, so I think it would be evacuations of these cities, and hundreds of thousands of people that still live in these cities. Frankly, that's another thing. Tell me what the populations are of Kramatorsk and Slavyansk, but we're talking about hundreds of thousands of people being forced to flee these particular areas. And those that stay will be subject to Russian abuses, vetting, police state activities. All those folks that are currently in occupied territories, their dreams are being repatriated and liberated, set aside, which is not an easy thing to for the Ukrainian government to do. You're giving up on significant portions of your population with no guarantees for peace, no clarity on the kind of support you're going to get from Europe, from the U.S.
So why isn't Europe part? I mean, just beside the fact that they don't agree with any of this, why not bring them in a little bit to see if they found any of this like a place where they could find common ground and they could do something?
Yeah. So I think it seems to me that this is how to describe this administration, bipolar, and just in the
well, also Steve Wickham is an idiot.
He's an idiot. But sometimes they'll say that the Europeans need to take lead. It's in their backyard. Trump will throw his hands in the air. and at other times they'll go ahead and operate outside of Europe. So again, completely unreliable, irrational approach. And I think this is just, all this other stuff about claiming, Trump is seized or secured peace deals is irrelevant
He stopped
unless you
30 million wars, Alex.
yeah, unless you deliver on this big one, Russia Ukraine. So I think he's back to trying to figure out if there's something to do there, if he could self enrich. It's a non-starter.
My God.
Thanks, Justin. We're talking about about 200,000 for those two cities alone, roughly 200,000, and then the rest of the smaller cities, several hundred thousand.
Also, these areas, what do they offer? The areas that would go to Russia in this deal, what do they offer in terms of agriculture or just the industry and the economic engine of Ukraine?
So the Donbass, Luhansk and Donetsk, as a whole, were kind of considered the industrial belt of Ukraine.
And those would be going
They're,
to Russian territory.
yes, they would. Well, the Russians occupy significant chunks of them already, almost all of Luhansk. But this would be totally wrecked. I mean, these are areas that have been fought over for more than 10 years. These areas are totally wrecked, but what they do have is still they have the factories, they have, think about it as the coal belt. A lot of the natural resources and commodities are in these spaces. In the south, in Zaporozhye and Kherson, this is the agricultural belt. So Russia would secure those areas.
That's what I mean. The agriculture, I think, is more. I mean, the industrial part. Okay,
I think
it's important.
It's all important. I think it's
Right.
the industrial.
But right now, they're still growing grain. They're still doing things, and they're still exporting it. That still exists, like economically. I guess what it.
Sort of the cold fields and so the commodities and stuff. Yeah.
Okay, so you're cutting them off from how much do you think?
Well, in terms of Ukraine's, gross domestic product and a engine for Ukraine's economic growth. Ukraine's kind of cauterized that wound. I mean, lots of these territories have been occupied since 2014, but it does amount, in terms of pre-war terms, a significant portion of the economic engine and power for Ukraine. I'm trying to see if there are other questions. I think between this video, this live and the video, and some other engagements, just to keep a drumbeat on. There's some almost 900 of us here. Please take this opportunity to write your Democratic and or Republican congressmen, senators. Tell them that you find this extortion ultimatum, a corruption scheme unacceptable. Make your voices heard and amplify this through your friends. I know that there's just absolute chaos throughout this administration, with new travesties, abuses, calling for the hangings of lawmakers. Just one of the most recent ones. Let them know that this is unacceptable, that this is still at the forefront of mind, and looking forward to doing this with you again, Rachel.
Thank you. Alex has to go. He has another event. And also, if you have any questions specific on this, he's going to be around for Thanksgiving. So I'll just make him answer the questions if you have any. One thing, what about the rare earth minerals? Are they in the part that's going to Russia?
A significant portion of them are, not all of them. It's a big country, but a significant portion of the what are called brownfields, like developed, that where they were already extracting from, are in this area, and that, but Ukraine is very wealthy from a natural resource perspective, and there are expectations that there are like greenfields, undeveloped, kind of just assessed rare earths in other portions of the country, but less ready to be able to kind of develop those areas.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks.
All right, I have to end now. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a great weekend, and maybe we'll do this again next week when we're stuck in
let's do it.
The middle of nowhere in Oklahoma.
All right. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.